I didn't notice the whisper at first. It was buried under the hum of the fridge, the click of my ceiling fan, the tired bones of this old house shifting in their sleep. But it was there, always there. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even clear. Just a soft drag of air, almost like breathing, but thinner, like something trying to speak but trapped behind layers of plaster, paint, and time. I first heard it at 2:17 a.m. on a Wednesday. I was lying in bed, eyes open, not tired, just floating in that strange space between boredom and unease. The night felt unusually quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your own heartbeat sound obnoxious. That's when I heard it, a whisper, faint, bit, intentional. I sat up, stared at the wall beside my bed, listened. It stopped. I waited, unsure if it was real or if my mind was playing tricks on me. After a minute, I shook my head, lay back down, and pulled the blanket up to my chest. And then it came again, closer, right behind my head. One word, maybe two. Not English, not gibberish either, just wrong. A language built to make you uncomfortable. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I told myself I imagined it. Sleep deprivation, stress, caffeine, whatever explanation let me avoid the idea that something was behind the wall. I moved my bed 6 inches away from it. Not because I was scared, I told myself. Just being cautious, sensible. The next night, I stayed awake again. Not scrolling, not watching anything, just lying there, listening. At 2:11 a.m., the whisper returned, clearer this time. Don't look. My skin tightened. I felt my breath stall in my throat. My hands, resting on the sheets, curled into fists without permission. I sat up slowly. The room felt warmer. Or maybe it was me. My neck itched. My back itched. My mind screamed at me to move. But I couldn't. Then came a tap. 3 knocks. From inside the wall. I stumbled backward off the bed, landing hard on the floor. I kept my eyes on the spot where my pillow had been pressed against the drywall. 3 more knocks. Deliberate. Patient. I didn't sleep that night either. The next morning, I pressed my ear to the wall. Nothing. It was just a wall. Cold. Unpainted behind the headboard. Dry and lifeless. I stayed there for minutes, listening. Just as I was about to pull away, I heard it again. Breathing. Slow. Rhythmic. Like someone standing on the other side, waiting for me to say something. I didn't. By the 4th night, I'd stopped pretending I didn't believe in it. There was something back there, and it wasn't a rat or bad plumbing or my brain playing games. It wanted me to listen. At 2:09 a.m., the whisper returned. The wall seemed to pulse, like it was breathing with me. I sat on the floor, knees to my chest, flashlight off, eyes wide open. The voice came through clearer than ever. You moved. I liked the warmth. I felt my stomach drop. That voice didn't belong to a person. It was wrong in ways that had nothing to do with pitch or tone. It was like hearing a nightmare speak. I couldn't tell anyone. What was I supposed to say? My wall is haunted by a whisper that misses my body heat, so I started writing things down. Times, words, smells, sounds. Each night, the voice came earlier. 2:17, 2:11, 2:09. I knew where this was going. It wanted me awake. It wanted me alert. It wanted me to listen. And then, on the 5th night, it said my name. Liam. Just once. Soft.
Familiar.
Disgusting. It made my ears feel like they were filling with fluid. I clamped my hands over them and crouched down by the door. I could feel the whisper in my teeth. I left the house at 4 a.m. and drove. Just drove. I didn't know where. I just needed to be away from walls. I slept in my car, parked by a lake I hadn't been to in years. Woke up to the sound of birds and wind in the reeds. For a moment, I believed I'd imagined it all. Then I looked at my phone. No signal. And at the top corner of the screen, the clock blinked. 2:17 a.m. I blinked. Once. Twice. The numbers stayed. 2:17 a.m. My stomach turned. I hadn't just woken up. I'd been asleep for hours. It wasn't morning. It was still night, and I wasn't in my room. But the whisper had followed. I stared at the trees, the water, the moon smeared across the lake like a bruised eye. My pulse started to throb in my temples. This was wrong. I'd driven an hour from home, turned off my phone, slept in the middle of nowhere, and yet, Liam came from behind me, inside the car. I spun, but no one was there. The back seat was empty, my windows fogged with my breath and something else. 3 streaks dragged slowly across the condensation. From the inside, I shoved the door open and fell out onto the gravel. The whisper was in my car. In my goddamn car. I ran. Shoes untied. Keys forgotten. I didn't care. I sprinted down the road until my lungs started to burn and the black trees on either side closed in like teeth. I had no idea where I was. I didn't stop. Not until the whisper was quiet again. By sunrise, I found a gas station. I must have looked like a ghost. Shirt inside out, dirt-stained knees, dry blood where I'd scratched my own arm too hard. The old man behind the counter gave me coffee and asked no questions. I sat in the corner, staring at the wall, waiting for it to breathe. Didn't. Not here. I went home around noon. I didn't want to. I didn't even want to turn the corner onto my street. But everything I owned was there. My wallet, my laptop, my meds, my journal with all the notes. The house looked innocent in daylight. Of course it did. Inside, it smelled mustier than before. Not like rot, more like something hiding. The way a closet smells when you open it after months and find it's been breathing without you. I went straight to the bedroom, looked at the wall. I almost expected a hole, a crack, a mouth, but it was the same as always. Off-white, harmless. Except now, when I stared too long, the paint looked wet. Not shiny, just off, like it was sweating. That night, I took sleeping pills. I didn't want to hear it again. I didn't want to be awake. But the thing behind the wall had learned my patterns. I woke up at 2:03 a.m., heart pounding, throat dry. The whisper didn't speak at first. It waited, and then came the sound I hadn't heard before. Scraping. Long, steady drags of something hard across the inside of the wall. Not frantic, not desperate, methodical. I pulled the blankets over my head like I was 6 years old again. But I couldn't block it out. The scraping got closer. Then came the whisper. Almost there. I screamed. Not loudly. Not like someone in a movie. It was this small, ugly sound that made me feel childish and doomed at the same time. I ran to the living room. Slept on the couch. Lights on. TV volume low. I didn't go back to that bedroom for 3 days. On the 4th day, I invited a friend over. Riley. She's the type that thinks ghosts are cool and houses with energy are vibey. I didn't tell her everything. Just said I'd been hearing things. She laughed it off. Said, probably pipes. We sat in the bedroom together. I pretended to be relaxed. She took it more seriously than I expected. Put her hand on the wall. Knocked it. Said it felt weirdly warm. She leaned in and said, if there's a ghost here, say hi. And the wall answered. A single knock. Her smile died. She turned to me, expecting a prank, but I was frozen. My legs locked, my tongue heavy. And then another knock. Faster. Closer. Riley backed away. Okay, what the fuck? We left the room. Neither of us said much. I offered her tea. She declined. Said she felt like something watched her the whole time she was in there. She left an hour later. She hasn't answered my texts since. That night, I didn't go near the bedroom. But I could still hear it. Knocking, whispering, scratching. Now in the kitchen walls, too. And the bathroom tiles. It was spreading. Wherever I went, it followed. I started hearing it during the day. Quiet, soft, but not gone. When I turned on the faucet, WHSSH, Liam. When I opened the fridge, knock, knock, knock. When I walked down the stairs and paused halfway, breathe, drag, whisper. It wasn't trapped anymore. It was exploring. And then it said something new. Let me out. I didn't respond. I didn't say a word. But somehow I think it knew I heard, because the next time it wasn't a request. Let me out. Louder. Closer. Not whispered, not gentle. It pounded through the wall like a voice made of fists. My knees buckled. I dropped the glass in my hand. It shattered. I didn't even flinch. My eyes were fixed on the hallway. The wall at the end of it, the one with no door, no window, began to make a low, constant noise. Not scratching, not knocking. It was vibrating. Like something was waiting just on the other side, humming with pressure, building up to a final moment. I left the house, grabbed my keys, didn't change clothes, didn't even put on shoes. I drove. I don't remember the route, only the feeling that if I stopped, if I hesitated even a little, something would crack. I ended up at my brother's place. He wasn't home, but I still had the key from last year. I let myself in, collapsed on his couch, slept in daylight for the first time in weeks. When I woke up, there were no whispers.
No knocking.
No pressure. No sound of breath in the walls. Just silence.
Pure.
Blessed. Silence. That night I dreamed of the wall. It was no longer solid. Pulsed like skin. There was something pressing from the inside, creating a shape. A face. It looked like mine. But the eyes were wrong. Too deep. Too black. Like someone had scooped out the soul and filled the holes with tar. Smiled. And whispered, "You're not real without me." I woke up with blood in my mouth, a bit in my tongue, bitten it hard enough to tear the edge. And in the distance, from inside my brother's house, I heard a faint knock. I moved in with a friend the next day. Didn't explain much, just said I was dealing with stress and needed a place to crash. He gave me the guest room, said it was fine. The first night was peaceful, but the second started again. Knock, knock. Only this time it wasn't coming from the walls. It was coming from the mirror. I stared at it. The mirror was old, slightly warped, made the edges of your face look off if you tilted the wrong way. 2:03 a.m., I woke up sweating. The mirror was fogged over, even though the room was freezing. I got up to wipe it, just to prove it was nothing. But when I reached out, the glass pulled back. Just an inch, maybe less, as if it had flexed, as if it was breathing. I slept with a towel over the mirror after that. Didn't matter. The knocking came from under the bed next, or the closet, or the headboard. No matter where I ran, it was always just behind the surface. And then came the worst part. It started answering my thoughts. I was lying on the couch one evening, scrolling, trying to pretend I still had a normal life, when I thought, if I burn that house down, maybe this ends. And from the TV speakers, even though it was muted, came the whisper, "Fire won't kill me." I jumped, threw the remote across the room, stared at the dark screen, seeing my reflection, smiled at me. I started recording everything, not to prove it. I knew no one would believe it. I just needed a way to track what was real and what was mine. Voice memos, phone videos, journal entries. I stopped sleeping at night and kept all the lights on. But when I played back the recordings, I heard things I didn't remember saying. One clip had my voice saying, "I miss you inside me." Another, "He's almost gone. I'm almost free." And worst of all, on a recording I made while I was out at work, not even home, a voice whispered, "Soon we'll be the same." I smashed the phone, burned the journal, erased the footage. It didn't stop anything. Then the faces started. Not in dreams, not in mirrors, in the walls themselves. The drywall began to bulge, like something was pressing from inside. I watched a shape form, long, thin fingers reaching, distorting the paint. One night I watched, paralyzed, as a hand pushed through. It didn't break the surface, it warped it. The fingers pressed against the barrier like latex, each knuckle visible, trembling, tapping lightly.
Top, top, top.
And then a mouth. It opened and said my name. "Liam, you invited me in." I didn't remember inviting anything. But when I sat down to think, really think, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe I had. There was a night, weeks ago, maybe longer, when I was curled up in that house, drunk, crying, whispering into the silence. I wish someone would hear me. I wish I wasn't alone. I'd give anything not to feel this empty. Those weren't prayers. They were offers, and something had heard. I tried moving again, farther this time. Rented a cabin in a remote wooded area. A friend of a friend gave me the contact. No neighbors for miles, no signal, no mirrors, no distractions. Just me and the trees. And for 3 nights it was still, not peaceful. I couldn't feel peace anymore, but still, until the 4th night. I heard footsteps, not inside, outside, but too close. They circled the cabin once, slowly, paused at the front door, then kept moving. And the next morning, there were prints, bare feet, human, one set, mine, but I hadn't left the cabin, not once. The same day, I found something carved into the wall behind the bed. I'm coming through. I packed, left everything but my keys, started the car before the sun fully rose, didn't look back at the cabin, not even once. But as I pulled away, I caught a reflection in the rearview mirror. Someone stood at the window, my height, my build, but they smiled with too many teeth. The next few weeks were a blur of movement. Hotels, motels, couch surfing with vague stories and desperate smiles. Never the same bed 2 nights in a row. I thought if I kept shifting, it couldn't follow. But the whispers got smarter. They weren't just saying my name now. They were remembering things I'd forgotten. Secrets, things I'd buried. The voice behind the wall, behind the mirror, behind the skin of the world. It knew me. What about Melissa? The first time it said her name, I froze, because I hadn't spoken that name aloud in 6 years. Melissa had been my girlfriend in college. We broke up after a long, messy spiral. She had accused me of being cold, detached, paranoid. Said I heard things that weren't there, that I needed help. She'd left me, and a year later, she disappeared. Everyone blamed her past, her instability, her loneliness. But when I heard that whisper say her name, in that same low, sticky tone, it made everything rewind. What if I wasn't the first? I started researching. Not ghosts, not demons, not hallucinations. I started looking into patterns. People who reported voices, walls that whispered, people who moved again and again, only to find the voice following. They all ended the same way. Either they stopped writing, or they were found with faces scratched off, literally torn, shredded, like they tried to peel themselves out of their own skin. One name came up in multiple forms. Dr. Eston Morrow, retired neurologist turned occult researcher. Used to be part of a clinical study on shared delusions. Ended up writing papers on auditory infection and mimetic possession. But when I heard that whisper say her name, in that same low, sticky tone, it made everything rewind. What if I wasn't the first? I started researching. Not ghosts, not demons, not hallucinations. I started looking into patterns. People who reported voices, walls that whispered, people who moved again and again, only to find the voice following. They all ended the same way. Either they stopped writing, or they were found with faces scratched off, literally torn, shredded, like they tried to peel themselves out of their own skin. One name came up in multiple forms. Dr. Eston Morrow, retired neurologist turned occult researcher. Used to be part of a clinical study on shared delusions. Ended up writing papers on auditory infection and mimetic possession. Most of it was pseudoscience. Melramplings. But he mentioned one term that stuck with me. Echo-parasite. It feeds on attention. It grows in solitude. And the more you fear it, the louder it gets. I found his number. Called twice. No answer. Left a message with just one line. I think I'm being echoed. He called back in 20 minutes. His voice was hoarse, like someone who'd been screaming for hours. All he said was, "It's already inside. The question now is, will it eat you or wear you?" Then he hung up. I sat in that cheap motel room for hours, lights on, walls bare, heart racing. And that's when I noticed something new. The wall across from me, it wasn't vibrating. It was shifting. The paint was moving. Very, very slowly. like something was breathing just beneath the surface. I stood, walked toward it, close enough to feel the cold from the wall. And there, just beneath the pale blue paint, I saw a mouth, perfect copy of mine. It opened and whispered, "We can finish this. Just let go." I screamed, punched the wall, punched again, fist after fist after fist. I didn't stop until the drywall cracked, until blood soaked my knuckles, until I fell to the floor, gasping, the whisper laughing. Not a loud laugh, not even a full one, just a dry chuckle, like dead leaves being crushed under a slow heel, like it had been waiting for me to break. That night, I did something desperate. I bought a hammer, a real one, thick, heavy, brutal, and I returned home, back to the first house, the source, the original wall. I walked in through the front door just past midnight.
No lights.
No fear. I'd finally made a decision. If it wanted out, then I'd give it what it asked for. I stood in front of the wall, my wall, and whispered, "Let's finish this." Then I raised the hammer and swung. Here is the next 1,000 words of the whisper behind my wall, continuing seamlessly with the same style, dread, and pacing. We're now at 5,000 words, halfway to completion. Editing cues are bolded and underlined for easy video sound effect placement. The hammer slammed into the drywall. A crunch, a thud. The sound of breaking ribs if a house could bleed. Chunks fell away. Dust bloomed into the air, thick and choking. I swung again and again, until my shoulder burned and the wall, my wall, collapsed inward. Behind it, nothing.
No pipes. No unsettling.
Just black, a gap, a throat, a tunnel maybe 2 feet wide, leading into the bones of the house. I stepped back, heart pounding, blood dripping from my knuckles, sweat soaking my shirt. The whispering had stopped. It was waiting. I should have walked away, should have burned the place down, erased the foundation, scattered the ashes. But the silence was worse than the sound. It felt like the pause before something horrible happens, like the darkness itself was holding its breath. So I crawled in, feet first, holding the hammer with one hand and a flashlight in the other. The space was tight, claustrophobic. Wood groaned around me, nails scraped my sides. Every breath echoed in my ears. And after maybe 10 feet, the passage widened just enough to crouch. That's when I saw the first mark, scratched into the wooden beam beside my face. "Wearing you now." The air was wrong.
Wet.
Too warm, like someone breathing on the back of my neck. I turned off the flashlight. Stupid? Maybe, but I needed to know what was real. The moment the light died, the walls pulsed. I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean they moved, like flesh, veins, skin, capillaries. The entire tunnel was no longer wood or brick. It was alive. I backed away, hammer up. The walls didn't like that. They started tightening, shrinking, crawling over themselves like they wanted to swallow me. So I ran, as fast as I could in a crawl space made of meat and madness. The whisper came back, but it was different now. It had weight, shape. It was behind me, inside me, through me. You wanted someone to hear you. You opened the door. Now be still. My hammer hit something. Solid. The tunnel ended. Or no. It didn't end. It opened. Into a room. Perfectly round. Smooth.
No seams. No doors. No windows.
And in the center, on a pedestal, was a mirror. Old. Warped. Surface like oil over water. And in that reflection, I wasn't alone. It showed me two versions of myself. The one holding the hammer, trembling, bloody, eyes wide, and the other smiling. Still, too still. Its mouth didn't move, but I could hear it. "Let me wear you. You're tired. I'll take care of it now." I threw the hammer, not at the mirror, at the other me. It shattered the reflection, but the mirror didn't break. Only the image did. Suddenly, the whispering screamed, not loud but close. It filled my skull like steam under pressure. I fell, clutching my head, convulsing on the floor, and then everything went still. I woke up in the front yard. Sun shining. The hole in the wall was gone.
No tunnel.
No blood.
No amer.
The house looked new, as if nothing had ever happened. I should have left right then. But I walked back in and found something on the living room table. A single folded sheet of paper with handwriting that wasn't mine, but looked exactly like it. Sometimes we don't wear masks. Sometimes the mask wears us. Thanks for the face. That was yesterday. Today, I looked in the mirror, and something is off. My face. It's all there, but it feels like a suit. Like if I scratched hard enough, it would slip off. My smile holds too long. My eyes blink too slow. And this morning, when I spoke to my neighbor, he said, "You look different. Like, you're trying too hard to be you." I don't know if I came out of that tunnel, or if it did. Maybe it crawled inside me. Maybe it's still coming through inch by inch. Because sometimes, when I'm alone, I still hear it, but not from the walls, from my throat. The mirror's reflection lingered in my mind like a stain I couldn't scrub away. The face wasn't mine anymore. It was a mask, and the mask was waiting to be worn. That morning, the silence was different. Thick, heavy, like the air itself was waiting for me to slip. I wanted to convince myself it was just exhaustion, hallucination, or maybe the lingering effects of too much caffeine and too little sleep. But the truth clawed at me. It had followed me home. I paced the small living room, hands shaking, eyes darting to every shadow, every corner. The wall I destroyed was patched, but something under the paint still seemed to pulse. It wasn't the house anymore, it was me. I was carrying it. I heard the whisper again, but this time, it wasn't from behind the wall or inside the mirror. It was inside my head. Clear, slow, persistent. Wear me. We are one. Let go. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the mouth in the wall. The smile, wider than any human should have. I thought about the people who came before me. Melissa, others I had read about, their faces scratched away in despair. They didn't fight back, or they fought too late. I decided I wouldn't give it the satisfaction. I needed to fight. But how do you fight something that lives inside your own skin? The next day, I started recording myself. Every sound, every whisper, every moment it tried to take over. The voice got louder every time I turned on the microphone, like it knew I was documenting it. I played back the recordings in the quiet hours, desperate for proof, desperate for reality. But all I heard was static.
No whisper.
No voice, just the cold, hollow silence of nothingness. It was mocking me. The nights grew worse. The walls around me breathed. The shadows crawled. I could feel the mask tightening, pressing against my skin like a second face, eager to replace mine. One night, I awoke to the sensation of something breathing on my neck. I didn't turn around, but I felt the cold fingers tracing down my spine. Then the voice, a whisper that wrapped around my mind like chains. It's easier to wear the mask. Stop fighting. I didn't listen. I screamed into the darkness, banged my fists on the walls, but the mask kept slipping, and with every slip, I lost a piece of myself. I found a journal in the attic, old, leather-bound, filled with scrawled handwriting. It belonged to the previous owner, a man named Harold Finch. He wrote about the same thing, about the voice, the mask, the wearing. He wrote of losing himself, becoming a shadow, until there was nothing left but the whisper. One entry chilled me. The wall isn't just wood and plaster. It's a gateway. Once it cracks, it lets you in, and lets it out. It feeds on fear, thrives on silence, and grows stronger with every lie you tell yourself. I realized then I wasn't the first victim, but I might be the last. Or maybe the mask would pass on to someone else. The journal ended with a warning. If you hear the whisper, don't listen. If you see the mouth, don't look. If you feel the mask, fight. Fight like hell. I decided to fight. I set up cameras, alarms, and voice recorders around the house. I surrounded myself with noise, light, and company. But the mask is patient, and it waits for the quiet moments, the moments when your walls come down. Last night, I woke to silence.
No breathing walls. No crawling shadows. No whisper.
I thought maybe it was gone, until I saw the mirror. My reflection smiled, but it wasn't me. It was the mask, and the mask said, "We are one now." The air grew cold. The room spun. I reached out to touch the glass, but my hand passed through. I screamed, and the mask laughed. I don't know how much time I have left. The whisper behind my wall isn't just a voice. It's a presence, parasite, a mask waiting to wear me completely. If you're listening to this, please don't listen to the whispers. Don't answer the walls. And for God's sake, don't wear the mask. The night grew heavier, like the sky was pressing down on my chest. Every breath was a battle against an unseen force squeezing the air from my lungs. The mirror's smile haunted my vision even when I closed my eyes. I had to face whatever was behind the wall before it swallowed me whole. I grabbed the hammer from the basement, the one I thought I'd lost. It was heavier than before, almost like it carried the weight of every shattered reflection. I returned to the hole. The gap behind the drywall was still there, almost as if it had never been sealed. I reached inside. The air was thick, wet, smelling like rust and rot. My fingers brushed against something soft, something alive. Then the whisper came again, low and insistent. "Come in. We belong to each other now." I clenched the hammer and crawled in. This time, the tunnel didn't pulse. It throbbed, like a heartbeat beneath my skin. The walls rippled with movement. I felt it watching me, waiting. Suddenly, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. It was the same room from before, the round one, smooth, no doors, no windows. But this time, the mirror wasn't alone. Around the edges, dozens of faces pressed against the glass, mouths moving in silent screams. Their eyes were hollow, their skin pale as death. I stepped forward. The whisper surged, stronger than ever. It wasn't just inside my head now. It filled the room. "You belong to us. Wear the mask." I raised the hammer, swung it at the mirror. The glass rippled like water, and then it shattered. But instead of falling apart, the shards spun and merged, transforming into a figure. Tall, faceless, made of broken glass and shadows. It moved towards me, slow and deliberate. The temperature dropped. My breath fogged in front of me. The figure extended a hand. I hesitated. The voice inside my head screamed, "Give in. Let go. Be free." But I swung the hammer again, smashing the glass figure into 1,000 shards that pierced the air like needles. It screamed. A soundless, shattering scream that echoed through the chamber. The tunnel trembled. Walls cracked. The faces in the mirror screamed louder. I ran. Behind me, the chamber collapsed. The tunnel twisted, folding in on itself. The walls tried to swallow me again, but I clawed my way out. I burst through the hole in the drywall, gasping for air. The house was silent. Still, I looked in the mirror in the hallway. My reflection was mine, but my skin felt tight, like a mask stretched too thin. I knew the battle wasn't over. The whisper behind my wall was a part of me now, a shadow in my soul. But I was still here, still fighting. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The nights grew colder, and the air thicker, like the walls themselves were breathing in rhythm with my faltering heartbeat. Every creak and whisper felt magnified, pressing closer until the house felt less like a refuge and more like a trap, a cage woven from shadows and silence. I stopped sleeping. Instead, I sat in the darkest corner of the living room, the dim light from the street lamp outside casting long, trembling shadows on the walls. The patch over the old hole seemed to pulse faintly, a slow heartbeat beneath the paint, and the whispers, they never stopped. No longer soft, they curled around my mind, twisting into words I could almost understand but never quite grasp. Come. I covered my ears, desperate to shut it out, but the voice sank deeper into my bones. I began to feel as if the very foundation of the house, the floor beneath my feet, was alive with something ancient, something hungry. One morning, I woke with a bruise on my wrist, dark purple and swollen. I couldn't remember how it got there. I looked at my reflection and noticed my eyes were bloodshot, edges rimmed in dark circles that no amount of sleep could erase. The mask beneath my skin was becoming heavier, pressing down until it felt like my own face was a stranger. The more I resisted, the stronger the pull. It seeped into my thoughts, twisting memories into lies and fears into nightmares. The line between reality and madness blurred until I wasn't sure if the whisper was a warning or a promise. Desperate, I scoured the house, searching for anything that might help. Old books, symbols, anything to fight the growing darkness. In the attic, beneath layers of dust and decay, I found a box filled with letters, diaries, and photographs belonging to the previous tenants. One name repeated, Harold Finch. His words echoed my own dissent. The mask waits. It doesn't ask. It doesn't plead. It takes. And once worn, there is no undoing. His final entry was a scrawl of desperate panic. I saw my face split open in the mirror, the mask slipping down to cover my eyes. I tried to tear it off, but it clung like skin, suffocating. If you find this, run. I swallowed hard and slammed the box shut. But running was no longer an option. The whisper had found its way into my blood. That night, the walls began to move. Slowly at first, a subtle ripple under the wallpaper, then a swell, as if the house itself was breathing, inhaling and exhaling in a rhythm matched only by the pounding of my heart. Shadows stretched and twisted, creeping like fingers reaching for me. And then, the whisper wasn't just inside my head. It echoed from every corner, every crack. Wear me, become me, we are one. I stood frozen as the patch on the wall split open, revealing a dark mouth lined with jagged teeth. It smiled at me, a predator satisfied with its prey. I wanted to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. Suddenly, the room flooded with cold light, and the mirror shattered into shards that glittered like ice. From the fragments, a figure emerged, faceless, tall, and made of glass and shadow. It moved with impossible grace, reaching out with hands that promised oblivion. I raised my hands to defend myself, but the figure was faster. Its touch was ice, crawling along my skin, turning warmth into frost. The mask pressed against my face. 1,000 voices whispered, clawing at my sanity. I struggled, tearing at the cold embrace. But the mask was patient. It whispered promises of peace, of freedom from fear, of silence without pain. I looked into the eyes of the figure, or what should have been eyes, and saw the reflection of my own broken soul. It was not just a mask. It was a prison, and I was trapped inside. The cold pressed harder against my skin, like an invisible hand squeezing every last breath from my lungs. I could feel the mask tightening, its edges slicing into the flesh beneath as if it were melting into me, becoming part of my very being. Panic clawed at my throat, but my body refused to move. I was caught in its grip, caught in a nightmare that was no longer confined to the walls of the house, but rooted deep inside me. The figure's voice, a chorus of hollow echoes, drifted through the room. You belong to us. We are the whisper behind your wall. I shut my eyes, desperate to escape, but the darkness only grew thicker. The air vibrated with whispers, each one a thread pulling me deeper into a void where time and space folded like paper. Suddenly, my reflection appeared in the shards on the floor, but it wasn't me. The eyes staring back were black pits, endless and hungry. My mouth moved, but no sound came out. The mask crept across the glass, smothering my image. With trembling hands, I reached for the hammer lying nearby. It felt cold, alien, but it was my only weapon. I struck at the shards. Glass sprayed like deadly rain, each piece singing a high-pitched scream as it shattered. The figure recoiled, its form flickering like a broken light bulb, then solidified again, stronger, darker. A new whisper emerged, sharp and cruel. The mask is eternal. I staggered back, clutching the hammer as the room spun. The walls closed in. I was drowning in silence and shadow, That's when I remembered the old diary. Flipping it open, my fingers shook as I traced the faded words. "There is a way out," Harold Finch had written, "but it demands sacrifice. To break the mask, one must give a piece of themselves, a memory, a secret, a soul. Only then can the whisper be silenced." Desperation gave me courage. I knelt on the floor and closed my eyes. I reached into the darkest corners of my mind and pulled out my most precious memory. The first time I saw her smile. A fleeting moment of pure light in a world that was otherwise cold and unforgiving. I whispered her name. I gave the memory to the mask. The cold loosened. The figure faltered. For the first time, I felt the whisper hesitate. But it was only a moment. The mask shattered with a deafening crack. Shards exploded into the air, catching the faint light like stars breaking apart. I gasped free but not whole. The house trembled. The walls groaned as if in pain. The whisper screamed, a banshee wail that rattled my bones. And then silence. I opened my eyes. The room was still. The patch on the wall was gone, replaced by rough, splintered wood. The mirror lay shattered, pieces scattered like fallen stars. But something lingered in the air. A promise, a warning. The whisper was not finished with me. I stepped outside into the cold dawn, the sun a pale promise on the horizon. The house stood behind me, dark and silent. I didn't look back, but I knew. The whisper behind my wall had left its mark, and it would wait, forever. The days after that morning bled into each other like a sickly watercolor, washed out and blurred. I told myself I was free, but the mirror's shattered reflection haunted my every glance. The fragments in the corner of the room glittered with a sinister life, like shards of broken promises trying to reassemble. Every shadow seemed to twitch, every silence stretched too long. I tried to convince myself it was over, but the whisper, that insidious murmur, was still there. Faint, almost polite now, but persistent. It was waiting. I stopped trusting my own thoughts. They felt infiltrated, tainted by the voices that circled in my head like vultures. The mask was gone, but its absence was like an open wound. And through that wound, the whisper fed. "Come back. We're not done." One night, I woke to the sound of scraping. Slow, deliberate, like nails dragging across wood. I froze. The sound wasn't coming from the floor or the ceiling. It was coming from inside the wall. I followed the noise to the patch where the hole had been. My fingers traced the edges, cold and trembling. The wall pulsed beneath my touch, alive. A new opening, wider this time, was forming, as if the house was hungry. I didn't want to look inside, but I did. The tunnel was darker than before, its walls slick with something damp and cold. The whisper slithered around me, no longer a plea, but a demand. "Join us." I took a step forward. Inside the chamber, the mirror was gone. In its place was a black pool of liquid, still as death. I stared, mesmerized, and then the pool rippled. A hand emerged, pale, slender, almost translucent. It beckoned. I felt my own hand move to meet it. The pool surged upward, forming a figure. This one wasn't faceless. Its eyes were empty voids, but its mouth curled into a smile. It whispered my name. Fear and longing warred inside me. The figure promised peace from the torment. But I remembered Harold Finch's warning. Sacrifice. I clenched my fists. Suddenly, the room shifted. Walls bent and twisted like smoke. The whisper became a scream. "Choose." I had no choice. I reached inside myself, tearing out a secret I'd buried deep. My shame, my darkest regret. I offered it to the figure. The pool swallowed the memory with a hungry silence. Light exploded. The figure dissolved. The tunnel collapsed behind me. I stumbled out, gasping. But I wasn't alone. A shadow lingered in the corner of the room, watching, waiting. The whisper had taken something from me, but it had given me a chance. The war wasn't over, but I was still fighting. The days that followed were a blur of half-light and cold sweat. The whisper's presence was like a shadow trailing me everywhere. Sometimes so faint it was almost a comfort, other times sharp and biting like a blade sliding beneath my skin. I could no longer tell if I was fighting the whisper or if I had already surrendered. Every reflection caught in a window or a polished surface seemed to flicker with a secret life, and my own eyes stared back at me with suspicion. I tried to escape the house, packed a bag in silence, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. But when I reached the door, my hand froze. The whisper was waiting. "You cannot leave." The voice was low, a breath against my ear. I pulled back, clutching the doorknob like it was the last lifeline. But the house groaned, the walls tightening as if to trap me inside. That night, the ceiling above my bed cracked, fine spiderweb fractures spreading out like the veins of a dying leaf. From the cracks came a cold wind, carrying a voice. "Your time is almost up." I knew then that the whisper wasn't just a presence. It was a curse, and it was counting down. I searched the diaries again, desperate for answers. Harold Finch's writings had stopped abruptly, a final page torn out and missing. But one note remained, hidden beneath a loose floorboard. To break the cycle, you must confront what you fear most, the face behind the whisper. Only then will the mask fall away. I sat alone in the dark, questioning what face that could be. Was it my own, or something darker? Then came the dreams, visions so vivid they burned into my waking mind. I saw a face behind the wall, an old man with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. He whispered promises and threats, offering freedom in exchange for my surrender. I woke drenched in sweat, heart racing. The whisper was louder now, more demanding. "Come to us, join the silence." I realized the battle wasn't just external. It was inside me. I began to see the mask everywhere, in my reflection, in the faces of strangers, even in the blank spaces of my mind. It was a parasite, feeding on fear and doubt. One night, I decided to confront it. I stood before the cracked mirror shards on the floor. My breath fogged the broken glass as I whispered, "Show yourself." The shards shimmered. The room darkened. From the fractured reflection, the face emerged. It was me and not me, a twisted echo, a mask made flesh. Its eyes burned with rage and sorrow. The whisper became a roar. The figure stepped forward. I felt myself pulled into the glass, falling through fractured realities. Each shard a portal to a memory. Pain, regret, anger, loneliness. I faced them all. The mask, the whisper, the shadow. And in that confrontation, I found strength. A sudden shattering. I burst free, gasping for air. The mask lay broken on the floor. The whisper faded to a whisper, no more silence. But the house still watches, still waits, and the shadow behind my wall is not gone. The silence was suffocating. Not the comforting quiet I once craved, but a heavy, pressing void, like the calm before a storm that never breaks. The house seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable. I felt it too, deep inside me, the slow tightening of dread. The whisper was gone, but its absence screamed louder than ever. In that silence, the shadow moved. Not a shadow cast by light, but something darker, a stain on the fabric of reality. It crept along the edges of my vision, teasing me with half-seen shapes and impossible whispers. I knew what I had to do, the final confrontation. I returned to the wall, the place where it had all begun, where the mask had taken me, where the whisper still lingered, waiting. The wood was warm under my palm, like a heartbeat beneath the surface. I pressed my ear to it, a soft murmur, a voice not quite human. I summoned all my courage and pushed my hand through the panel. Cold darkness swallowed me whole. Inside, the air was thick and alive. The walls pulsed with a strange rhythm, like the heartbeat of the house itself. I could hear the whisper again, faint but unmistakable. "You can't escape. You belong to us." I walked forward, every step heavy as if wading through water. The darkness parted to reveal a room or something like one. The walls were mirrors, reflecting not me, but memories. My memories, twisted and distorted. And there, at the center, stood the figure, the mask made flesh, the whisper incarnate. eyes burning like coal, mouth twisted in a cruel grin. It spoke, voice like 1,000 voices layered atop each other. You came back, brave, but foolish. I gripped the hammer tighter, no longer a tool of destruction, but a symbol of defiance. The figure lunged. Time slowed. The house groaned. I swung. The hammer shattered the mirror walls. Fragments exploded like fireworks, scattering memories into the void. The figure screamed, a sound that tore through the air, raw and desperate. It reached for me, but I was already free. Light flooded the chamber. The walls dissolved. I stood alone, breathing, alive. The whisper was gone. The shadow vanished. The mask shattered. But as I turned to leave, a final whisper brushed my ear. We are never truly gone. And I knew the whisper behind my wall would always be waiting. The darkness inside the wall was thicker than anything I had ever known. Almost tangible, like a heavy curtain that pressed in on me, suffocating and endless. The air tasted cold and stale, carrying the faint but unmistakable scent of decay and forgotten memories. Each step I took echoed unnaturally, as if the space itself was breathing alongside me. The whisper, faint but persistent, wound its way around my mind again. Soft, coaxing, sinister. You belong here, it murmured. We are part of you, and you are part of us. I gritted my teeth, trying to push back the growing fear that clawed at my sanity. I knew that voice, knew it was not my own. It was the house, the shadow, the mask that had taken residence deep inside me. The walls shifted and pulsed, a living maze that twisted in impossible angles. Reflections surfaced in the darkness. Not my reflection, but faces. Faces I recognized. Faces of those who had lived here before me, trapped in the endless prison of the whisper. One face emerged closer. A woman with hollow eyes and a forced smile, her lips moving silently in a plea I couldn't hear but understood. Help us. Her eyes seemed to say, wide with terror and longing. I wanted to scream, to run, but my feet were rooted to the cold floor. The whisper grew louder now, layered voices intertwining into a discordant chorus. Join us. Forever.
No escape.
The room spun. My mind wavered on the edge of collapse. But inside the chaos, a small spark of defiance ignited. I remembered Harold Finch's words, the warning about the mask, the sacrifice, the need to confront what lies behind the whisper. My trembling hand reached for the hammer I had brought with me, the only tool I had left. The figure materialized from the shadows, no longer faceless, but a grotesque mirror of myself. Its eyes were black pits, void of any humanity. Its smile was a twisted grin, mocking and cruel. The whisper became a roar as the figure stepped forward, voice overlapping with the chorus in my head. Give in. Let go of your weakness. I raised the hammer, feeling its weight steady me. I'm not yours. The figure lunged, and I swung. The sound of shattering glass filled the chamber as the mirror walls cracked and exploded into fragments. Each shard glistened with memories, painful, joyous, fearful, and then dissolved into the darkness. The figure screamed, a raw, terrible sound that seemed to tear the very fabric of reality. It reached for me, fingers stretching like smoke, but I stepped back through the falling fragments and into the fading shadow. Light flooded the space, a blinding, purifying light that burned away the darkness and the whisper. The shadows recoiled, disappearing into nothingness. I fell to my knees, gasping for air, heart pounding in my ears. The chamber dissolved. The wall that had trapped me was gone. I was alone in my room again, cold, shaken, but free. Yet, as I stood and turned away, I heard a faint, chilling breath against my ear. A whisper, not a plea but a promise. We are never truly gone. The house was silent now, but the whisper behind my wall would never leave. The days after that night were heavy with an eerie calm. The silence inside the house was thick, almost palpable, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that hums with hidden menace, like the world was holding its breath for what would come next. I moved through my routine like a ghost, each creak of the floorboards and whisper of the wind outside sharpening my nerves. The shadow behind my wall seemed to retreat, but its presence lingered just beyond perception, watching and waiting. Sleep came in uneasy fits. My dreams were haunted by visions of that dark chamber, the shattered mirrors, and the face that was both mine and not mine. The mask's twisted grin haunted me even when my eyes were open. I began to wonder if I had truly escaped or if the whisper was merely biding its time. One evening, as the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across my walls, I heard it again, a faint breath from the wall beside my bed. At first, I thought it was the wind, but the whisper came back, clearer this time. "We are inside you." My skin prickled. The house groaned softly, as if agreeing. I pressed my palm against the wall, the wood cold and vibrating beneath my touch. The whisper was no longer distant. It was intimate, a voice crawling beneath my skin. That night, I stayed awake, listening. The whisper told stories, tales of the house's dark past, of the souls trapped within its walls, of deals made in desperation and broken promises. Each word was a thread pulling me deeper into the labyrinth of fear. I realized then that this was not just a haunting but a prison. The whisper was the jailer and the prisoner, bound by an ancient curse, and I was trapped in the middle. Driven by desperation, I dug through the house's history. Old newspapers, faded photographs, and brittle letters revealed a pattern of tragedy. Residents vanishing without trace, madness driving others to despair. The house was alive with secrets, and every secret was a piece of the whisper's puzzle. One name appeared again and again, Elias Wren, a man rumored to have dabbled in dark rituals, desperate to cheat death. I found his final diary buried deep in the attic, a tattered book filled with frantic scrawls and cryptic symbols. Elias wrote of a mask, a doorway between worlds, and a price paid in souls. He warned that once the whisper claimed you, it never let go, that the only escape was to face the darkness head-on. I understood now what I had to do. I had to find the door. The whisper grew restless, could sense my resolve. The night I searched for the door, the house turned hostile. Walls seemed to close in. Floors shifted beneath my feet. The air was thick with cold and menace. I reached the basement door, hidden behind a false wall. It was heavy, ancient, and pulsing with a dark energy. As I grasped the handle, the whisper rose to a howl. "Do not open," but I did. The door swung open to reveal a narrow staircase descending into complete darkness. I took a deep breath and stepped down. The stairs ended in a cavernous chamber. The air was thick with dust and silence. At the center stood a pedestal. Upon it, the mask. The mask was beautiful and terrifying. Crafted from bone and shadow, it seemed to absorb the light around it. I reached out. The whisper screamed. The house shook, but I grabbed the mask. In that moment, the chamber exploded in light and shadow. I was pulled into a vortex of memories, voices, and faces. I saw Elias Wren, trapped and desperate. Saw the souls caught in the endless cycle. Saw my own reflection breaking free. Then the silence. I was back in my room. The mask lay shattered on the floor. The whisper was gone. For now. The days after the mask shattered were strangely calm. The house no longer groaned or whispered, and the heavy darkness that once clung to every corner seemed to lift. But peace was fragile, like a glass poised on the edge of a table, ready to fall at the slightest touch. I tried to live normally again. Work, eat, sleep, but the shadow of what I had faced never truly left me. Sometimes, I would catch myself staring at the wall, half expecting to see a crack or hear the faintest sigh. At night, my dreams were haunted by flickering images, faces dissolving into smoke, hands reaching from walls, the echo of that sinister voice promising, "We are inside you." I told myself it was over, that the whisper had been defeated, but deep down I knew better. One evening, while sitting in the dim glow of my living room, the air shifted. The temperature dropped suddenly, a cold breath brushing across my neck. A soft sound came from the wall, the faintest whisper, almost a sigh. I froze. Then the voice came again, clearer this time, almost gentle. Not over. Not yet. Panic surged through me. I pressed my hand to the wall, my skin prickling with the residue of dark energy. I realized the truth. The house was not just a place. It was a living entity, a predator that fed on fear, weaving itself into the minds of those trapped within. The whisper was a parasite, burrowing deeper with every moment I tried to escape. My reflection in the mirror caught my eye, a flicker of something unfamiliar in my gaze, a shadow lurking beneath the surface, a part of me I could not shake. I was changing. Days turned into weeks. The boundary between waking and dreaming blurred. Voices echoed in empty rooms. Walls breathed with unseen life. I sought answers from anyone who might help. Paranormal experts, historians, even mediums. Each told the same thing. The house was cursed, its whisper an eternal prison. They warned me to leave, to abandon the house before it consumed me entirely. But I couldn't. The house was my home. The whisper was my curse. And I was trapped in between. One night, drawn by a force I couldn't resist, I returned to the wall. With trembling hands, I pushed through the broken panel once more. Inside, the darkness welcomed me back, but this time it felt different. Alive, watching, waiting. From the shadows emerged a figure, no longer the grotesque mask, but something more subtle. A presence that whispered promises of power and escape. Spoke softly, "Embrace us, become one with the whisper." I felt the pull, the seductive lure of surrender. But I resisted. I grabbed the broken fragments of the mask from the floor and pressed them to my skin. The shards burned, searing through the darkness and the whispers. Light exploded from within me, scattering shadows and silence alike. The chamber trembled, the walls cracking and crumbling. I stepped through the collapsing darkness, back into my room. The whisper screamed, fading, dying, for now. But I knew it was a battle that would never truly end. The whisper behind my wall was a part of me, forever, and so was the darkness. Even now, as I sit here in the quiet of my room, the air thick with the weight of what's past, I know the whisper waits. It waits behind walls, beneath floors, inside the corners of my mind. That night, after the battle with the shadows, I thought I was free. But freedom in this house is a lie wrapped in silence. I hear it sometimes, a breath, a faint whisper, a reminder, promise. And then one evening it came again. Not from the walls, not from the shadows, but from inside me. I woke in a cold sweat, heart pounding like a drum. In the mirror's reflection, my eyes glowed faintly, unnatural. A flicker of that twisted grin danced behind my lips. The whisper was no longer outside. It had crossed the threshold. I am both hunter and hunted now. The house's curse has become mine. I'm trapped inside a prison without walls. A cage forged from fear and shadow. But this time, I'm not just a victim. I have a choice. I can give in, let the whisper consume me. Or I can fight, carry the darkness like a weapon. The mask is broken, but the curse is not. It's a part of me now, etched into my soul. And maybe that's the truth of the whisper. It's not just a voice behind the wall. It's the darkness inside us all, waiting to be faced, to be embraced, to be overcome. I don't know what comes next, but I do know this. I will never be silent, because the whisper behind my wall is mine, and I am ready to listen. The days after that final confrontation felt like a fragile piece, but I knew better than to trust it. The whisper was a wound beneath my skin, a shadow behind every glance. One evening, the air in the house thickened again, heavier than before. The shadows gathered, pressing in close, like a living storm. I found myself drawn back to the wall, to the place where everything began. My heart pounded with a mixture of dread and defiance. As I approached, a voice came. Not the usual whisper, but something deeper, colder. You cannot escape what you carry inside. The wall shimmered, and suddenly it wasn't a wall at all. It was a gateway, an endless void swirling with black mist and fractured faces. I knew then that this was the true prison. Not the house, not the mask, but the darkness that lived inside me. The whisper wasn't a curse laid on me by the house. It was the darkness I had carried all along, waiting to be named. I stepped forward into the void. The mist wrapped around me, pulling me deeper. Voices from my past echoed. Regrets, fears, lost moments. Each one a shard of the whisper, feeding the darkness. But I refused to fall. I gathered every ounce of strength, every fragment of my broken self. I shouted into the void, a roar that shattered silence. Light exploded around me, scattering the mist and the faces. The darkness screamed, not in pain, but in rage. It had been hunted, confronted, and found wanting. I emerged on the other side, breathless but free. The wall behind me was just a wall again, solid, silent, lifeless. I understood then that the whisper would never truly disappear, but neither would I. The darkness inside me was not a monster to be defeated, but a part of me to be understood. And in that understanding, I found my power. The whisper behind my wall would always call, but now I could choose whether to listen, and I chose to be louder. Years later, the house stands quiet. New residents come and go, unaware of its secrets. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind is just right, a soft whisper drifts from the walls. A warning, a reminder that darkness lives in us all. And sometimes it whispers back,